After 5 years in Japan, my time was up. The place I called home had an expiration date. I had to give it up. But to go back to a country with a past and conditions that I tried to leave behind. I was gambling everything on a long-shot visa that would let me stay in Japan. But first, I had to see if there was anything or anyone left for me in America. This is that story. I came to Japan on a 5-year visa. At the time, 5 years felt like forever. I had a plan and I had ideas about how life would unfold here, but things didn't go according to plan. I underestimated what Japan would be. It wasn't the dynamic place that was full of unique opportunities like I had imagined. Then COVID hit. 2 years of restrictions and limits on movement, whatever groove I had hoped to find in Japan, all but disappeared. I quit the job that brought me here. After that, I bounced around trying different jobs, trying to find my place. But in Japan, you pretty much are who you are, and there's almost no changing that. Before I knew it, my visa was expiring. I had to leave. But the question was, leave for where? Return to America? To do what? I had no job and no home. And how would I return to a country that I no longer felt connected to? And what about going to another country? That would mean another full restart and major transition. I don't have the energy for that, not at this phase in my life. There was also the question of who I'd be leaving behind. I'm not alone in Japan. I have someone here, someone who's been a big part of my life here. But even with that, I couldn't ignore the truth. Japan hadn't lived up to what I hoped it would be. And America? I didn't see a future there either. Then there was my Japan visa. I didn't want to renew it under the same terms where a company held the rights to my residency. I didn't want to be owned. There were some additional complexities about my status as a foreigner in Japan, but at the last minute, I found a path that would allow me to come back to Japan under better terms, one that would give me more freedom and more control. But it wasn't guaranteed. I hired a Japan immigration specialist who had deep experience inside the Japan Immigration Bureau. He gave me a plan, but I had to leave the country first. I had to show Japan that I was going to play by its rules. If the plan failed, I'd be stuck in the US and I'd have to jumpstart my life there. And I was not trying to go back to driving Uber. Despite a lackluster 5 years in Japan, it was still my best immediate option. The plan laid out by my immigration specialist was the only path that had a real chance at getting me back to Japan. In some ways, it was a good time to go. I hadn't seen family and friends since I had left for Japan. People were aging, relationships were fraying, and time was steadily passing. And maybe it was time for another adventure. It had been years since I'd had one, and I had lost that side of myself in Japan. Why not make this trip to America more than just a visit? The days were ticking down. I had stayed in regular contact with my immigration specialist to make sure everything was in order. I was gambling everything on this. My immediate future hung in the balance. Travel day finally came. I didn't feel apprehensive about leaving Japan, not even my partner. I did everything that I needed to do. If it was meant for me to return, then it would happen. But if I was apprehensive about anything, it was the idea of being stuck in America. My partner walked me to the security checkpoint. We waved goodbye until we couldn't see each other anymore. At the customs desk, I had to declare my intent to leave Japan and give up my residency. The customs agent gave me a form with the declaration, and then I handed her my residence card. She asked me to verbally confirm that I was surrendering my residence in Japan, effectively my visa. I nodded yes, and a tear fell from my eye. She handed back my card after punching a hole in it, and I bowed deeply. The type of bow when you are apologizing for deep regret, when you are really grateful for something, and when you are saying farewell to someone. As I moved on to the terminal, I could see the customs agent glance out of the corner of her eye. I think she was caught off guard by my emotions as I surrendered my card and effectively my life in Japan. And I didn't know if I would be able to return to that life or if it was officially the end of my existence in Japan. Once I got into the terminal and reached my gate, it felt like I was already back in America. The area was loud and the energy was just different. Something seemed off about it. Maybe it was just the contrast between the quiet and discreet behavior that I had grown used to over the past 5 years in Japan. We boarded and pushed back. Then, not even 100 feet into the pushback, the plane just stopped, and we sat there for a half hour. The pilot came on the radio and said there was a problem. We sat in the same spot for a while longer and then quickly taxied to a remote part of the airport. There was some shuttling back and forth by the flight attendants, and then the pilot came into the cabin. An unruly passenger had to be removed. After they removed the passenger, tensions were high inside the cabin. The flight attendants were in full combat mode. They ordered the passengers to put our phones into airplane mode. As I was putting my phone into airplane mode, a flight attendant locked eyes with me from across the aisle. He asked me if I was still using my phone. I wasn't, but I didn't challenge him back because it was clear that he was looking for another passenger to remove from the flight, and I wasn't going to give him any additional motivation. The service didn't get any better for the rest of the flight. The food was barely edible, and when I saw the child-sized utensils, it was clear that United was playing some kind of joke. Considering everything that happened with that flight, I vowed to never fly United Airlines on an international flight again. Because of the delay out of Osaka, we were an hour late flying into San Francisco, which meant a tight connection to my flight to Austin. While in the airport, what struck me most was really the atmosphere. There was no spark, no presence. People were just going through the motions. It was just a different atmosphere altogether, very different than what I remember when I left the US. I arrived in Austin, Texas. I don't have a long history with Texas, but it's where my heart is. If I ever left Japan for good, Texas is one of the few places in the world that I'd go. I needed a taste of Texas, the food, the people, the atmosphere. After settling in at my hotel, I found a nearby Tex-Mex spot, the kind of meal that I hadn't had in years, and it didn't disappoint. The next day, I set out to find a cowboy hat. I have no use for one in Japan, but I was not leaving Texas without it, and why not show a little Texas flex in Japan every now and then? So I went to a popular cowboy shop, found a hat that I really liked.
I can't be flexing on nobody. Y'all know y'all talking about nobody. Who gonna stop me? That's nobody.
I had been wanting a proper cowboy hat since I was a kid. Next day, I drove to Houston to see two friends, one from my Uber driving days in Austin. Jason is pure Texas, fun and just a good guy overall, someone I can talk to about anything, someone who would go to war for me. Later on, I met up with a college friend and his family. We went to a local area restaurant, but we were seated a half hour late, so we didn't get a chance to finish our food or even properly catch up because the staff rushed us out at closing time. But it was good to meet him and his family after so many years, and he seemed to be doing well. From Texas, I flew northeast to see a close friend of mine, someone I had known for years. I would be staying with him for a good part of my trip stateside, so his place was really base camp because it was the start and end point of my trip. It allowed me to leave my heavy bags there so that I could travel light to the other destinations during my trip stateside. It was also a place that I could stage the various things that I had planned to take back with me to Japan, if all went according to plan. It was also a chance to visit New York City, For me, it was all about the food, sandwiches and pizza, everything I had missed while I was in Japan. My friend and I had a camping trip planned for later in the summer. That was really a big event for me because I had heard about his annual camping trips with family and friends, and I always felt sad because I couldn't be there to participate. So I was really looking forward to camping with him because he and I had never camped together before. I grew up in New York City and my friend grew up in New Jersey. Spent a lot of time out there hanging out with him and his family during holidays and special occasions, and that really gave me an appreciation for New Jersey. A week later, I flew to Florida to see my aunt, my mom's sister, my uncle, and my cousin. I let her down a couple of years earlier when I canceled my plans to travel from Japan to see her for the Thanksgiving holiday. I would not do something like that again. When we got to their house, my aunt was speaking to me, and I froze. I studied her face, her skin, and her hair, and it hit me in that moment that I was seeing someone for the first time in 5 years who actually looked like me. I told her. The next day, my cousin and I drove out to the Florida coast to see the SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket launch, and that was another big event for me because of how rare Falcon Heavy rocket launches are. As we drove out to the coast, a thunderstorm raced us, and if that storm made it out there, that rocket launch would be canceled. Fortunately, when we arrived, the skies were clear, and the launch went off without delay. And that was just such a big highlight to see that rocket take to the sky. It was just such a wonder. It was also great because I got to experience such an event with my cousin. It took me back to when I was 15 years old. My family took a trip to Florida and I wanted to go to Cape Canaveral. We traveled all the way out there, and there was no rocket launch at that time, but it was just so cool to see the place where the space shuttle launched from. It was good to be back with my aunt and uncle. My aunt cooked, and I felt something that I hadn't felt in years. Since my mom passed away, I haven't really felt that sense of home. So while I was there in Florida with my aunt, it really gave me that sense, and it's something that I didn't realize had been missing. Just sitting with my uncle was meaningful, whether it was having lunch with him or playing songs for each other in his entertainment room or talking about great movie scenes. As I get older, I've really grown to appreciate his wisdom and his perspective. And for me, it's all about the act of sitting with someone. That's something that I learned with my mom during the final few months of her life before she passed away. And it's about being present with someone and also just enjoying that time simply and quietly. After a few days, it was time to move on. I don't think my aunt and uncle know how much that time with them meant to me. There is a place to call home. I just hadn't realized it until the time I spent with them. From Florida, I drove to South Carolina to see my uncle. I hadn't seen him in 41 years. So I was really looking forward to that because it was really a question of where did that time go? He's slower than when I remember him, but very much the same person. Very deliberate, calm, and just gentle. He's really the type of person that everyone gravitates toward. So it was good to be back with him, and I think it was even more special that we really were where his roots are in the deep south of South Carolina. So how do you make up for 41 lost years? We went to a local restaurant and talked for a while, and then we went back to his apartment, and outside his apartment was a wooden swing, and we sat on the swing and talked for a while, and I felt like a kid all over again. I just could not believe that, again, that much time had passed. But then he brought up something, a claim from another relative. It was a lie, plain and simple. I kept my composure, but it was a strike, no doubt. And that lie waited for me to travel all the way from Osaka to South Carolina, and it hit dead on. I considered the fact that I had not seen my uncle in 41 years. Decades had passed, and out of respect for him, I told him that I would not dignify the lie and I would not defend against the lie. Inside, I was boiling. The next morning, before I set off to my next destination, I met my uncle for breakfast. We went to Waffle House, and that was an experience all by itself because there's nothing like that in Japan. At breakfast, my uncle began talking about our family, and I felt that I really needed to dial in because he was sharing pieces of our family history that I didn't know. And I felt that it was important to capture those things and take them along with me. After breakfast, it was time to say farewell. I guess that's how life goes, where you make the most of the time that you have with someone and you take away the best parts of those moments as you move on. I'm thankful for that time with my uncle because I really feel that I'm a better person because of that time with him. Moments after leaving my uncle, I pulled over to the side of the road. I sent a message to the person who told that lie. I said, "I know what you've been saying to people about me. You know that you're lying. Let me remind you that when my name comes up, put respect on it, or say nothing at all." There was no reply. With my family reunions over, it was time for me to face America. In part 2, I hit the open road to rediscover the country I left behind.